Welcome to this edition of SAU Magazine, a weekly program featuring news, profiles, sports, commentary, interviews, and special events, all coming to you from the campus of Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.
I'm Tracy Campbell.
And I'm Kezzie. Today we'll be talking to Dr. Stacy Clanton, Professor of English at Southern Arkansas University. Thank you for coming, Dr. Clanton.
Thank you for asking me.
Okay. How did you first become interested in teaching, and about how old were you?
I was approximately 32 seconds old, I suppose, when my interest began. No, and I'm not really being silly. I've always been interested in learning, and I've never quite been able to distinguish learning from teaching. They've always been sort of the same thing to me. In fact, I consider a course I teach a waste if I don't learn something during the process. My mother returned to teaching after an absence of quite a few years while she was taking care of her children at home. And that was when I was about in the 4th grade. And I didn't think of myself as a teacher. It's just another way to help me learn at that time. When I was older, and in fact in graduate school, I have had a kind of an interesting conversation with a guy who was a real good friend of mine whose family had been real good friends of my father's back during the Depression when he was a young man. And I found out some interesting things about him. I found out that he had, like many people in the around 1929 or 30, had fallen upon very hard times, and he was not able to continue his schooling. He was going to school at what was then called Monticello A&M, or 3rd District or something, very much like we were Magnolia A&M. And he was in high school. He was getting ready to graduate from high school, and his great desire, I found out from these people, his great desire at that time had been to become a college English professor. Now, he had never told me that. He had never said, son, I want you to do what I was never able to do. You know, he was always just encouraging of me to do what I wanted to do, what I felt moved to do. But I found out, as I was already well on my way to becoming one, that my father had wanted to be a college English professor. All the time I was growing up, I thought that's what daddies did. I thought everybody's daddy quoted Chaucer and Shakespeare and Tennyson and Longfellow and stuff like that. And wrote stuff. You know, I didn't realize that was a unique thing for fathers to do in my generation. So I'm not sure but what I've always wanted to be a teacher, or because I've always wanted to be a learner.
Where did you attend college as an undergraduate?
At the same place my father and my mother also attended. When I went there, it was called Arkansas A&M College, and now it's the University of Arkansas at Monticello. So that was about 150 years ago. We were just looking forward to the invention of kerosene at the time. And, no, it was a while back.
What type of a student were you? Did you study more than you partied, or did you know how to balance them out, or was there anything such as partying?
No, we didn't party then. Partying was invented entirely by students in the 1990s. I probably goofed off a lot more than I should have. I know I did. I cut a few classes, and I paid the price for it. You know, and I missed some classes for other activities, and I paid the price dearly in the fact that I didn't learn some things as well as I could have learned those things had I been there and more astute about it. I was kind of an active student. I figured out my freshman year I had a total, if I cobbled them together from various places, of about 3 weeks. My freshman year, when I wasn't involved in rehearsals every night for a play I was doing, one play or another. So yeah, I guess you can call that partying. I did a little bit of that. I also studied well enough to graduate with honors, or got lucky, or maybe there's a mistake in the registrar's office. I'm not sure which.
I know you've talked about your father, but what profession did your mother go into?
Well, she was a teacher. She retired as a teacher. My father retired as a house painter.
Really?
And this is what he became when after the war, World War II. He used his GI Bill to learn a trade, whereas lots of guys were coming back and going to college. He really wanted to do that, but he thought, well, I've got 2 little boys at home and 1 on the way, so I'll train in something where I can immediately begin supporting my family. My mother had gotten a 2-year degree back in the early 30s at Monticello, and so at that time, she was a fairly highly qualified teacher in these parts. To have 2 years of college, if I understand it correctly, in those days, one could teach with a high school diploma and a certificate that says you'd passed some little test, some test that was given for proficiency. So with my mother's 2 years of school, she was quite a qualified teacher. She taught in one-room schools and mainly in Bradley County, Arkansas. And I still run into people who remember, real old people, remembering my mother as their teacher occasionally. And so she was the teacher. My father was a house painter, but he was always a reader and a writer and a learner. It's kind of a family play, I guess.
Well, based on the years that you were at University of Arkansas, Monticello, how would you rate the overall quality of your education?
The quality of my education?
Sure.
I've always said of schools like us, like SAU and UAM and lots of other schools in the country, that you can get a really good education there. It's just that unfortunately it's not such that a person really has to get a good education in order to get a degree there. And so I think my education there was as good as I tried to make it. I had some excellent teachers and some wonderful minds who let me become more than a student, let me become a fellow thinker with them, and that was encouraging to me. So I'd say it was overall quite good. When I was there was a very active drama program on campus, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get involved with that some. And I acted in quite a few productions that we did. There's also a pretty active music department, that a choral program and an instrumental music program. I don't think, though, it was the music department was ever as active and as comprehensive as ours is now. Of course, I don't know what it's like now over there. And I don't think the drama program there was at that time as strong as ours is in the years I've been at SAU. But once again, it's a difference in time, so we may be comparing apples and oranges here.
You've already mentioned that you're in the drama program. What other, were you in any societies or fraternities or
No,
anything
my
like
brothers went that route and enjoyed it a great deal. I never did. I didn't do that. I had friends all over campus. Not really, no. I had friends in all the groups, and there were guys, and we didn't have all that many Greek programs at Monticello when I was there. There were, I think, 3 fraternities, and both my brothers are in one of those, and I guess I could have pledged one of those, but I didn't want to do that. I stayed pretty busy in other stuff.
What was your major in college?
Besides partying?
Right.
No, I didn't. That's not true. I didn't really party a lot. I'm not sure when I became such, but I had a double major. I had a major in English, a BA in English. In fact, I was one of only, I think, 2 or 3 people my graduating year who had a BA degree. But my major, BA in English and speech and drama. And I wasn't really sure which of those would be the path I took, or maybe even both of them.
And that was your first choice? You didn't do a lot of major swapping?
No, I didn't. I guess I declared myself an English major the first semester I was there. In fact, I remember a good friend of mine and I walking, the guy who later helped me find out my father's secret ambition when he was unknown ambition when he was younger. He and I walked into a room for freshman English majors, and there were Tim and I and about 200 women, and we were kind of the minority in those days. And it's still a little bit like that now. I think that there tend to be in the undergraduate level more women English majors than men, and graduate it tends to be the opposite, oddly enough.
After getting your undergraduate degree, did you go directly into the workforce, or did you jump back into school?
Yes, I did. Well, and I'm not really being silly now. At the year I graduated, there was a lot of pressure on young men who were no longer in undergraduate school to become part of the United States military. And among the ways one could, the only options one had on that was teaching, and I started teaching at that time in public schools. I taught at, my wife has I had a BA, I think I mentioned. My wife had a BSc, a Bachelor of Science in Education, so she had all the paper, all the credentials, and I had an emergency certificate. And we both got a job teaching at Hampton, Arkansas. and we taught there 1 year, and then we moved the next year. We signed a contract to teach at Crossett, Arkansas, and we taught there for 2 years. In the meantime, during the summers, we were going to graduate school. I was going in the English program, and my wife was going in in education. And so eventually things worked out such that we could become full-time graduate students, and so we both did.
How were your studies in graduate school?
I loved it, just loved it. Shoot, I'd still be in graduate school right now if they hadn't kicked me out by giving me a degree. Now, graduate school can be really nice. I mean, I'm not sure that every graduate student has the same experience I had, but graduate students at that time in that place were treated very nicely. This is at the University of Arkansas. We were paid fairly well to teach, so we were able to build teaching experiences. And many of us were finding ourselves committed to what we were teaching as well as to the things we were studying. Our faculty were at once both mentors and friends, so that I was able to develop some very close relationships with quite a few of the faculty members, and all of us were. I mean, it was just the norm. And I think the best graduate, I mean, that's not unique by any means, the best graduate school experiences I think are like that. So I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I was able to teach. Part of the time I worked as I think the official title was administrative graduate assistant. That is, I got to help with the workings of the department, registration and classes, class management, stuff like that for the Department of English. And that was a lot of fun.
How long did it take you to get your master's degree? My
master's degree? Well, I've cobbled together summers and stuff like that. So summer, and then I had actually started on coursework by the following spring. So I guess one would say about 1.5 years to 2 years.
What was the next big step after that?
After getting the master's, yes, or after starting it?
After getting your master's.
Well, I went on into the doctoral program. I was very fortunate at that time in that place. Well, here we go with time and place again. But at that time in that place, not everybody was invited to continue in the doctoral program at the University of Arkansas. Not everyone who got a master's degree was. Not that there was anything wrong with folks, it's just there were very limited openings, and so I was fortunate enough to have been invited to pursue a doctorate there. And some of the folks that finished master's with me went on to schools that were at least as good as and reputable as Arkansas, and are now having successful careers with doctors from other places. So I went pretty well straight on into graduate school, into a doctoral program. And how long did it take me to get a doctorate? Approximately 22 years, something like that. No, I'm teasing you again. It was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And then I started teaching full time while I was finishing my dissertation. That's not unusual. That still goes on a lot. Sure.
How did your philosophy change from being an undergraduate student to going to the doctoral program or finishing it? How did you change?
You know, I hate to say this because in saying it, I'm afraid I'll get a wrench in my shoulder from patting myself on the back, but it didn't really change a great deal, I don't think. I think because I had good folks who kind of shared with me the life of the mind, both as faculty members and fellow students, good folks, fellow students who were able to do this. I think graduate school sort of confirmed that there is a real life of the mind, and that life of the mind transcends and is greater than and wider than and broader than and deeper than, but does not replace or does not make unimportant the rest of the life that we live. And so I think I had that confirmed, and that's one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much, is that it was like almost like walking around all the time in the middle of an intellectual community. Not that we were always sitting around saying great thoughts, but what we found out was there was no such thing as a thought that didn't have the potentiality for greatness.
SAU Magazine is a production of broadcast journalism students in the Department of Theater and Mass Communication at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia.